This is Charity Rouse, Director of Local History for the Spartanburg County Public Library System, and today's topic is military records on Fold3. We will be focusing primarily on War of 1812 records, but all of the searching tips and tricks that are given can be used for any of the collections on Fold3. So, how do you get to Fold3? Well, one way to get to Fold3 is to use our library subscription. And if you go to the library's main page at spartanburglibraries.org, you can read all about our closures and how we're adapting services in this time of safer at home. And then on this page, if you do scroll down on the left-hand side on your computer screen, I don't know how it will show up on your tablet, will be the schedule of activities. But our databases are all in this division of our website called Learning Tools. So if you click the Learning Tools from whichever spot in our website, you will have this page. I did back out and make this a little bit smaller so you could see more on one screen. On the left-hand side, we have facets that help with finding different subject area databases because we do have a lot of databases. So if you click on the genealogy data subject link, there's also a local history subject link later that has slightly different databases on it. And you click that and you get boxes for the various databases that we have relating to genealogy specifically. At this time, Ancestry Library Edition is available from home with your Spartanburg Library card number. And the note here says April 30th. They have been extending it month by month, and I have not heard whether they will extend it through June, but it is likely. So if your library also offers it, whatever library you have a library card for, feel free to use that link and use it until it doesn't work anymore. We also have links for Family Search, Find My Past, and then Fold3, because it has always been offered for us with two options. One is from home and one is from the library. So click the one from home. And then, I just do want to mention, we do have our Spartanburg County Public Library death and obituary notices here, and that is our in-house index of the Spartanburg Herald Journal paper for death and obituary notices. We're still working on cleaning up and finishing the 1920s, but overall we've got most of the obituaries and death notices for the run of the paper that it still exists on microfilm in that database. So if you click Fold3 from home, you will get barcode login. It's not a very pretty page, but hey, it works. And this is where you would enter your Spartanburg County Public Library card number. And then you would go to the library's page. And it's Library Edition, Spartanburg Libraries you see up at the very top. There's a banner there so you know that you're on our account. Over here, you will note that there is a sign-in, and you can set up a free account on Fold3. There are some collections that are free, some collections that are part of the paid database. The War of 1812 pension applications, pension files, are one of the free databases because that work has been paid for by the Federation of Genealogical Societies and other genealogical societies and people who have donated to make sure that that is a free transcribed and imaged web database collection within Fold3. So you can log in as yourself, and it works in tandem with the library's subscription. So a lot of people jump in and say, okay, I'm going to do this name or keyword search. And you can, and I'll show you what that search result looks like for a rather unusual name, so I don't get that many results. But One of the things that you can do to help the database help you, and this is true for most any database, is narrow down what you're searching. If you know the person died in 1827, then you need to not be searching for events after 1827. So I don't want to be searching World War I for someone who died a century before. So making sure that it has a chance to help you the best it can just is good research technique. But I entered Caleb Bobbitt here in this main discovery, saying it's searching all records. Unless they've improved it drastically, it doesn't search all of their records. It searches a good handful of the major collections in Fold3, but not everything on the site. I got 21 results. As I said, this is a fairly unusual name. If I did this for my father's name, John Rouse, 3 of the last 4 generations of the males in his family are all John Rouses. I would get hundreds of thousands of results, because they're just, every Rouse family has a bajillion Johns. Very few of them, other than those 3, are actually related to me, but it just is a very big amount of data to sort through. But even this 21 results, we've got a Revolutionary War pension, we've got this is the right person, this is the right person, and you can see that some of that by the right names, the spouse's name. If we continue down the page, this doesn't tell us much. And then there's a different Caleb Bobbitt, who was a corporal. And then this guy from Massachusetts, someone mentioned in a letter from the Mexican-American War. Continuing down the page, we've got somebody who's Confederate. As I said, my Caleb Bobbitt died in 1827. And then you also have a 1906 Polk City Directory for Baltimore. So you have to do a lot more sorting if you don't let the database help you. So how can you let it help you? Well, if you scroll down the main page on Fold3 just a little bit, you'll see the section Browse Military Records by War. You can search all titles, and then it has the major conflicts that we have been involved in as a country. So the Revolutionary War, War of 1812, Mexican-American, early Indian Wars, etc., down through some of the more recent conflicts. And then they do also have a section of non-military records. So they have some Native American and African American collections, as well as a couple of the US censuses. So since we're interested in War of 1812 today, we're going to search in the War of 1812. And you can either search in this box, or what I prefer to do is hit the Browse All War of 1812 titles here, and it's the same thing for any of the conflicts. And that would get you to a search page that just searches within the parameters of that war, and you can search in this box. You also see here, you've got a category listed, and then you've got a publication. Publication is what Fold3 calls their data sets. And so lots of different items in here from both the American and the Canadian side, as well as a couple of British sets, I believe, but a lot more North American. But that can be good if somebody fought for Canada. So when I searched for Caleb Bobbitt in this search box at the top under the search within War of 1812, I only got 5 results, which is a whole lot easier to go through than 21 or thousands. So we've got a pension application files index and then a pension files index. And I'll show you what both of those look like in just a second. And then we have 3 more entries on down 2 of which are for the other Caleb Bobbitt. So the other way to get to the pension files is in that publication list. You can scroll down and you can see different collections within this War of 1812 section, including service records, which the pension files are mostly complete now. Some of the other collections only have limited states or limited records in them. Obviously, his service record did not appear in the search, or it would have been in that list when we searched for Caleb Bobbitt. But sometimes there are name misspellings, so you can go in and search a little bit more focused so that you can find out whether it's just a typo. So I know that he served in Virginia. He was born in Virginia. He served in Virginia, but he died in Kentucky, and his widow was doing the pension application from Missouri. They're the one branch of my family that most people moved west. My direct ancestor stayed right on the home farm in the mountains of Virginia. The people who moved west lost touch with our part of the family and vice versa. And so to them, we are the lost family, and to us, they are the ones that got lost because they're the ones who moved. And my direct ancestor had 3 daughters, one of whom was Charity. So it does make a difference when surnames change. So I'm going to search first in Virginia, and then it gives you surname options, so B's, and then I scrolled down all the way down to find Bobbitt, and there were about 5 or 6 different Bobbitt spellings: B-O-B-B-I-T-T, B-O-B-I-T-T, B-O-B-B-I-T, B-O-B-B-E-T-T, B-O-B-E-T. So just make sure you're checking all of the various spellings. Different databases do soundex or fuzzy spelling based on similar sounds in different ways, and Fold3 doesn't do as much with that as some others such as Ancestry, although they are working to improve that. So put on your thinking cap and figure out how many ways your surname that you're searching for can be misspelled and check all of them. Yes, it's tedious, but that's sometimes how you find that piece of information, which is the needle in the haystack that you're looking for. So under the B-O-B-B-I-T-T, we have 4 options here, including a Randolph, Robert, Thomas. Randolph may be one of the brothers or a cousin. And you get the thumbnails here that tell you, okay, we've got a lot of things in this file. There are 36, I think, images in this file, pages in this file, that they have scanned out of the pension file. One thing to note, these are scanned from the files at the National Archives. And they were scanned in the order that the papers were in when the person scanning opened the file. That does not mean that the papers are in chronological order. That does not mean that somebody else's paper didn't get mixed into this set of papers. We do our absolute best in archives to keep things in original order and in the right place and put back in the right place. But if somebody pulled some of this for copying at some point in the past and then was lazy about how they put it back, or they didn't mark where they found it in the folder, or they shuffled things, researchers sometimes are overly helpful and reorganize things. So it's not going to be in chronological order. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. You will also sometimes find supporting documents. You might find a marriage record, you might find Bible pages. These guys were not in the age of photographs or photocopiers, so everything was handwritten. And sometimes if you wanted that original document and you couldn't read or write, you sent in the Bible page. And that may be your family's only Bible page. And it is in a random file at the National Archives. Not in this particular file, unfortunately, because that would be a fun thing to find. But this family, fortunately, they were married in Virginia. And because they were not Church of England in Virginia in the time period, they were nonconformists, Methodists, I believe, in this case. They may have been Baptists. They did the marriage bonds with the state, with the court, county court. And I have very good marriage records for this whole side of the family because they were in Virginia and because they did the registration with the courts. I don't know what we would do with our South Carolina ones because South Carolina just did not keep marriage records, except for in, Charleston has some, but the upstate of South Carolina certainly doesn't. And, not until 1911 for marriages. So I'm not sure what the state of applications would be if this had been a South Carolina War of 1812 pension file. So I'm going to click on that page 1, and this is what the page looks like. You get the image of the item. You get the film strip of what is in the file. And these last couple pages to the left of Caleb Bobbitt are the previous person's files. So it's a little bit like an old school microfilm film strip that you can see the images in the order that they were scanned. You get image information on the left, and all of these, the film strip and the indexing information, can be minimized out of your way, or you can have them on the screen. Now, there were 2 results that had this particular card in them. And this is the other card. And this is from the pension applications file. And this is literally a card file of just these cards. So think of an old school library catalog that you have somebody who types up the information and then it is filed in order. And so as a finding aid to these other folders that have more information. So this is the index, and the other folder does have a copy of this card because it's a nice little summary. So he has 2 World War of 1812 numbers on here. You get the soldier's name, widow's name, she was Nancy Bobbitt. You get Private Captain Shively's Company of Virginia Militia, which is the service that he was in. His enlistment date, August 7th, 1814. Discharge date, February 22nd, 1815. On the right-hand side, you do get Bounty Land references. And Bounty Land was either land promised when they registered to serve or land given in lieu of cash payment at some point. And then Bounty Land was also offered at various times as part of a pension or bonus for having served, because we didn't have anything like the Veterans Administration and healthcare and all of that. So it helped. Now, another reason to give Bounty Land to soldiers who had served is that you have trained people on the frontier. And so these were the first line of defense against the Indians as we started moving west and as we started taking over more and more Native American land and pushing them west. So it gives you an armed force that theoretically is trained to be the line of defense between the Indians and civilization. But the Bounty Land is something that you can also look for. Less of this is available digitized online. Not everything is available digitally. There is a fair amount of expense in digitizing things and storing things online and migrating all of this information every time the technology updates for how you save files. But a lot of things are online, so it doesn't hurt to look. These numbers could also be sent in to researchers at the National Archives to get those files. Now, there is a remark over here that the widow was erroneously pensioned as of Captain Trimble's company of Virginia Militia. So either Caleb served in 2 different companies, which he could have, or over time, people forgot who the spouse served under. Some of the applications in this file were done in the 1850s, which is why you see the notation of the residence of widow. They were proving residence there in the 1850s, and then in the 1870s under the Pension Act, more residences were listed. Now, remember, Caleb died in 1827, claimed here 1830, claimed in a different place 1828. You know, time flies, and when we don't have computerized clocks and cell phones telling us the date every day, you can lose track. So this is the right guy. And by the time the widow was doing particularly the application in the 1870s, she was, I believe, in her 90s. And so it was just a situation where memory gets foggy. The children are probably doing a lot of the application for her, and they're relying on family stories. So if dad died in 1827 to 1830 in Kentucky, and they're out in Missouri, you know, there's a lot of room for memory slips. It does tell us the maiden name of the widow, Nancy Blair, and then it tells us when and where they got married. I have a copy of this marriage bond from that courthouse, so that was fun to find. It was one of the early marriage bonds in that county. So what do the papers in these files look like? I've got some screenshots here, and we'll talk through what some of these are, but I wanted you to see the variety of different types of notes and handwritings and different things that you will find. There are a number of different handwritten, partially typed forms that a clerk at the archive would have filled in. And they're numbered, and this number would refer back to a main registry entry in a big ledger book. And so in this particular War of 1812 widow's pension, number 5786 is when she finally got her widow's pension in 1873. And then that it was registered with a lot in 1874. So the center panel is a front and a back of, or it's a folded piece of paper, unfolded and scanned. That is number 2802 from the Pension Act of February 14, 1871, War of 1812. And this is saying, hey, she applied for this. They rejected her in 1872 in December. They're questioning the death date of 1830 in Pulaski County, Kentucky. And you see Captain Trimble here versus Captain Shively. They received it May 9th of 1871. It took them a while till December of 1872 to reject it. And there's some notes on here that said, okay, in October, they were waiting for something, or they received maybe a affidavit of support from a friend of the family. In 1872, in January, they're questioning the marriage and the credibility of witnesses. September of 1872, they sent a special circular to her saying, we want more information. And then they're rejecting it in December of 72 for want of proof of marriage. So she's in Missouri. She got married in Virginia. And after that, they had moved to Kentucky. So she's having to write back to the courthouse in Virginia. There's expense in that. One of the reasons she's applying for the pension is because she does not have a way to support herself and is a financial burden on the family and everybody else. And so, but she's having to spend her own money to write back to Virginia to get this proof of marriage and have the clerk of court in Virginia send her the proof of marriage, and then they turn it in and send it back into Washington, D.C. You will also find other pages of handwritten notes. Some of them you can figure out what the clerk is talking about, and some of them you can't. And so it just depends on how much time you have to spend reading through all of the notes to try to figure things out. This note, you do see Nancy Bobbitt, widow of Caleb Bobbitt, and that they were claiming Captain Trimble's, but it was Captain Shively, also Colonel Sanders of the Virginia militia. And so that gives them various militia groups to search for rosters of the soldiers to see where he actually was. On these pages, these are the next couple of pages, you get, again, that list. You get the clerks trying to get their act together and their mind together to see what is actually on here. Now, this particular document is dated in 1851, February 27th, 1851. So this has to do with one of those bounty land applications as opposed to the pension application. Pensions were offered at specific times for specific people, and if you did not live long enough to, or your spouse didn't live long enough to apply for the pension, or they didn't qualify because they owned too much land or they had too much income or whatever, then you didn't qualify for that pension. So it just depended, and you had to know, hey, they did this act and I need to apply for it, and then take the initiative to apply. So it can be interesting. As of at least a couple years ago, there were still a handful of people receiving Confederate pensions or Civil War pensions. And so sometimes a child, dependent child, disabled child, something like that could be a pensioner as well as the person who served. And so it just depends. So you may find some surprises. And then the page on the right hand is just one of those. It says 80 acres. Not sure where, not sure what. The other side of the page didn't actually tell me anything. So, you will also find these larger forms that are filled in and scratched out because it was rejected. Rejected for want of proof of marriage and credibility of witnesses. Now, what they're asking for the witnesses is someone who served with Caleb. Well, they don't have touch with those people who served with Caleb necessarily because they've moved significantly. They're halfway across the country now. And so the affidavits of the witnesses are people who have known them for a long time. Some of the children are in the affidavits of witness saying this is what dad said. But we're dealing with the fact that dad died in 1827 and these applications are in 1850s, early 1850s and early 1870s. And so that does make a difference for memory. On backs of things, you get notes, you get things added up, you get, hey, this was rejected, so that's easy to flip through and see, oh, rejected, rejected, rejected. These were often tri or quad folded and in letter size packets. On the right-hand side, you get a little bit more of the brief of the claim for the widow's pension. So a clerk would have examined her, written in her responses for this. This was done in this was approved in DC, but this was written in Missouri. So the examiner was reporting back. And they've checked the Bounty Land Division. So they've checked other parts of the government so that you can see what types of items the government already has, because it's a little easier to go across town in Washington at that point than it is to write back to Missouri and then wait and wait and wait for the response to come back. These pages, and again, I'm not showing you all 36 pages, but this is a very robust pension application. There's a lot of documentation because they had to do a lot of back and forth, and they rejected it, and she had to send, and etc. So widow's pension claim, warrant number, service, marriage, and death of soldier. They received the warrant. They're saying soldier died in 1837. And this gives the maiden name Blair. And it does say over, so you go to the back page. They have proven cohabitation. Widow gives the date of marriage on or about 3rd of March, 1795. And so you get different notations here. This was done in December 28th, 1871. And then here is a note saying, hey, we need to put him in Shively's Shively's militia rather than the other. And that they've re-examined it in 1852. They've gotten that figured out. So it looks like the clerks in DC are like, no, it's Shively's company. The family's like, no, it's Trimble's company. And you go with what the paperwork says. So on this, you have some very pretty letterhead in 1873 in August. And it's saying that it was filed in 1871, rejected in 72, and then and the marriage had to be prior to February 17th, 1815. That was one of the parts of the Pension Act, that, you know, it couldn't be some 18-year-old chick that the soldier married at 80. It had to be a long-standing early-ish marriage, contemporary to the time that they served. And evidence is not furnished with the declaration. The claim is not reopened, but will when they receive actuarial evidence about that point. And then on the right-hand side, it's Randolph Bobbitt and Nancy. Randolph is, I believe, one of the sons, and because there are multiple Randolphs. And they can be, but he's saying, hey, this is what I know. It's the declaration. We also have the notes from the pension office, and you notice they scratch things through, but these people are handwriting everything, and so they're trying to make it as easy on themselves as they can when they're doing kind of rote claims. But that's part of the Bounty Land. And these are in order from the files, so it's bouncing back and forth from the 1850s to the 1870s in the file. And you get some lovely handwriting, and you get a list of, hey, the postmaster is saying that the witnesses who are saying, claiming to know about Nancy Bobbitt are wonderful, and it's one of those situations where they are trying to certify that the people who are attesting to Nancy Bobbitt's claim are good people. And so one of the rejections was the quality of witnesses. So the postmaster is now attesting to the quality of the witnesses. And so you also get, this is from a Thomas Bobbitt, and handwritten documents. So the handwritten documents, the positive is this is all a written document case. So anything that is sent in, it's not somebody makes a phone call and says, yeah, this is who this is. It's all handwritten letters and documents to read through and to testify to this person is who they say they are and where they say they are. And then you've got sometimes blank documents. This Department of the Interior, it's like, really? Okay. I'm not sure why the special circular was in there, except for maybe it was noted that they had sent a copy out to her, but normally they would have the information filled in. And then this is her declaration again, and her Nancy Bobbitt, that is her signature at the bottom of the application. And it is notarized by somebody Liggett in the court there. And this does tell me Caleb was discharged in Norfolk, Virginia in March of 1815. So that's kind of interesting information. On the back of it, it does give a spot for who appeared to testify and witness her signing and filling in the information. And then here's a general affidavit from two daughters, Beulah Bobbitt and Rebecca Liggett. And you see the Liggett, Harvey Liggett over here. So different people are, again, testifying to try to get that information. I mentioned the Bounty Land, and this is one of the collections that's not as complete, but I did go into the Land Warrant Applications Index to see if Caleb Bobbitt shows up. So I did the search for the surname, went through the various levels, and there were 5 Bobbitts in here. None of them were Caleb or any of the family. There was nobody from Virginia in the B's that I could find. So my guess is the Virginia part hasn't yet been digitized and uploaded. So this just is an index record. It doesn't have the images, and it's for a Harris Bobbitt, just to show you what it looks like. He was a private in the War of 1812 from North Carolina under Captain Lawhon in the 1st Regiment of North Carolina Militia. He had a land warrant number, rejected false. That means he got it. If it was rejected true, it would mean it was rejected. He didn't qualify. But because it's false, he got the land. So it's just one of those things. The first time you look at that, it seems weird. But you have to just realize what the question is. And the views is just how many people have looked at this particular document on Fold3. I'm at least 3 or 4 of those views. And then what's in the blue here blocks here is just the further down. You can see add a correction there, and it tells you what collection it is. If you have questions about what has been digitized, or what's in that collection, you can click the link in the publication title and see more information about what that is. It was last updated in 2016, and it is the index of approved applications. Approved and rejected applications. So you may find that, like, for instance, for a number of years, I got lots and lots of questions about World War II draft registration cards. For many, many years, the only draft registration card set that was up on Ancestry or Fold3 were the old man's cards. But that was not very evident until you dug down to that, what exactly is in this collection? The old man's draft were the people who were too old to be drafted for World War II. There were 3 other drafts for those who served. And so most of those other 3 sets of draft cards are now online on Fold3. South Carolina has finally been added to that set. So some things to remember about military records in general. U.S. military records are private for 62 years after the final separation of the person from the military. That means that only that person, their spouse, their parent, or child, with proof, can obtain the records. So if the person is deceased, you have to prove they are deceased and that you are next of kin. And actually, an attorney acting on behalf of one of those people can also, but there's extra papers for that and expense. While many military records have been digitized, a whole lot more have not and will probably never go online. There are just billions of records, and it takes time and money, and the record set has to be one of what is considered to be redeeming value so that it's worth the cost of digitizing that. There was a fire at the National Personnel Records Center in St. Louis, Missouri in 1973, and it destroyed many, many, many World War I, World War II, and Korean War Army and Army Air Corps personnel files. Those that didn't turn to ash in the fire were water damaged, and they're still doing recovery work on those. And they've made amazing progress, but it was a lot of files that got damaged in the fire. And if you're interested in reading more about it, feel free to go on the National Archives website and search St. Louis Records Fire, and you can see videos. And if you follow the National Archives Facebook page, you can see videos of some of the restoration work they're doing on many of these records. But it's painstaking. Navy records were fine. They were in a different location. It was just Army and Army Air Corps, and it's something after H, HA, I think, and for many of them, just because of where things were being stored in what rooms and what got damaged. Archives.gov, make sure it's .gov, is where we want to go, and they have an entire huge section that you can link to from the front page for military service records. Now note, since I'm in South Carolina, if you are looking for Confederate records, those are not at the national level. Those are at the state level, in the state where the person served, because Confederates were not part of the federal government. And so those records are in different places. Now, Fold3 does have a fairly robust set of Confederate records, and you would search Civil War Service Records Confederate. And from what I've seen, there are more Confederate records on Fold3 than there are Union records, but the Union records are coming slowly. It just takes time. It's a lot of work for any one of these collections. So, happy researching, and I'm going to turn the recording off and then I will take questions.